Hey, fifth graders, here we are on the second book written by Ted and Betsy Lewin. This one's called Horse Song, and I'm just going to tell you right away, it has some words that I do not know how to pronunciate. So I'm going to do my best, and I'm kind of just using the whole education part of sounding words out and sounding the best they can. So again, here's a little bit of information about Ted and Betsy and what they're doing and how they travel to different countries and learn different things. And this one is called Horse Song. So they start us out with a map. They show us where Mongolia is. It's between Russia and China. And if you look down here at this area, you can see that over here's Africa and then Europe. And so Russia's up there. So we're talking about Mongolia right here in this spot. There's Australia that we've read about. So let's go. Mongolia. The captivating land is one of the few unspoiled wilderness areas in the world. The landscape ranges from snow-capped mountains and dense forests to wide open steppes and the sandy soils of the Gobi. It is home to perhaps the last horse culture on Earth. The people are warm and friendly. Out of the population of more than 2.5 million, so 2.5 million people live in Mongolia, 1/3 live in the capital of Ulaanbaatar. Ulaanbaatar. Okay. See, I have to sound it out. Ulaanbaatar. Okay. The rest are nomads, means they don't have a home where they stay forever. The rest are nomads who travel the vast countryside with their livestock and a portable felt tent home called gurs. They carry with them only the most essential possessions, including richly ornamented everyday objects such as knives, saddles, and hand-carved and colorful painted stools and tables. So they don't have belongings like we do, and they may live in one place for a week and then they pack everything up and they leave, and they make this tent that we're going to see pictures in a little bit, but this tent that they live in all folds up and they're able to put it on the back of a horse or a camel. So they don't have dressers and beds and all that stuff because they wouldn't have a way to carry it. Mongolian nomads and their horses are inseparable. Never shout at your horse, people say. It is your best friend. The horses are used for transportation and racing. They are small and have great strength and stamina, but they are very uncomfortable. Sorry, I knew that was going to happen. They are very uncomfortable to ride. To overcome this, riders often stand up in the stirrups of their saddles while their horses trot. Riders need very strong leg muscles to do this. Every summer, Naadam festivals are held all around Mongolia to celebrate the country's most popular sport, wrestling, archery, and horse racing. The Naadam brings isolated nomads together to take part in an event, see friends and relatives, feast, and celebrate life. So they have a great big fair, a big festival, and it's called Naadam. And that's when it would bring in people from all over the country. They know the weekend or the week that it's going to be, and everybody comes back together. So then they're able to see their friends and their relatives and talk about what's been going on, celebrate life. It is a time for Mongolians to remember centuries of traditions and to keep their culture heritage alive. In the horse racing events, boys and girls race half-wild horses across the treeless steppe for honor and glory. Even though that looks like a different word, I looked it up and it said steppe, but it means a great big open area, kind of like what we would call a plain. So it's called steppe for honor and glory. It is these legendary child jockeys that we have come so far to see, and they signed it Ted and Betsy. So arrival. Are you Betsy and Ted? Asked a young woman as she steps from the crowd at the Ulaanbaatar. I gotta look this up. I'm gonna tell you how I do this.
Everyone knows that, right?
Let's go back here.
You know they're on the other side of the world in Ulaanbaatar. That's the capital of Mongolia.
Ulaanbaatar. Okay. Are you Betsy and Ted? Asks a young woman as she steps from the crowd at Ulaanbaatar Airport. I'm your guide. My name is Batsurin. It means fine warrior. It's a boy's name. My mother consulted a shaman before I was born and told I would be a boy. Batsurin laughs, then gestures to a giant of a man with a shaved head. This is Amar, our driver. Amar means peaceful mind. So off we go with 5 warriors and peaceful mind on our great Mongolian adventure. Our trip is 800 bumpy, roadless miles in a minivan. Along the way, we encounter herds of horses, hinks, yaks, 2 humped camels, and Mongolian 4-eyed dogs. We see nomads on horseback wearing long robes called deals and generals' hats called jajing magalis, and are astonished by throat singers playing horse head fiddles. I'm imagining that's what this is, a horse head fiddle. We find bones of dead horses. We play dice games and with sheep knuckles and sleep in gur camps on the Ajanan steppe with crickets as big as a cucumber. We see black vultures with 10-foot wide wingspans. In the Gobi, we marvel at the flaming cliffs dense with dinosaur fossils. 3 days later, we reach our destination, the camp of the horse trainers. The members of Tamar's family are some of the best horse trainers in the country. They welcome us into their gur. Sanban U, they say. Hello. Sanban U, we reply. We're offered the traditional bowl of areg, a fermented drink made from mare's milk, plus a dish of curds and lumps of sugar. The areg tastes like watery, fizzy yogurt and smells faintly of horses. Grandma is making fresh curds from the morning's milking of the cows and goats. The cheese-like curds are a staple of the family's diet. She slices them into squares with a long thread. Then they'll be dried in the sun on the roof of their gur. Different kind of lifestyle. We duck out through the low doorway of the gur to watch the catching of a horse that will be used for riding. A man rides out standing up in stirrups. He carries a 10-foot long pole with a rope looped called an urij. He plunges into the galloping herd, and with a lightning quick flip of the loop, he snags a horse. The rider reins in his horse, pulling the lassoed horse up short. It is then tethered at the yua, a long rope suspended like a clothesline between 2 poles. So you can think of a clothesline here and a clothesline there, and a rope that hangs between them. That's called a yua, or a, it's UYA, yua, yay, maybe it's yay. The rider heads out to the herd again. This time the horses come straight at us. We don't know which way to go. Luckily, the herd, now only a few feet away, veers sharply to the left just as the rider lassos another horse. During the summer, the mares are milked every 2 hours. One of the older boys leads a foal to its mother and lets the young horse begin to nurse. After a few moments, the foal is pulled away and some of the mare's milk is collected in a bucket. Then the foal is allowed to finish nursing. We each take turn churning the mare's milk in a big plastic drum. The milk must be churned 1,000 times or more to start the fermentation that will turn it into areg. And fermentation is like when something kind of starts to get bad, like get moldy or get yucky. Cottage cheese, sour cream, all of that kind of stuff. When it starts to get bad, it has kind of a yucky smell to it. So I'm surprised that's what they drink. A new batch of areg is started every evening and fresh milk is added throughout the day. Out in front of the gur, Grandpa shows Tamar how to fix a bridle. We also talk about the stallions that will compete in the Naadam. Grandpa tells us a racehorse must have a narrow forehead, a wide chest, a flat back, and strong, slim legs. The racehorses receive special care starting months before the race. They are kept separated from the herd and they are tied up at a yaw. We decided to call that a yaw. They are fed special grasses. Like boys and girls everywhere in Mongolia, Tamar dreams of bringing honor, glory, and prizes to the family by winning the big race that is now only 1 week away. It's evening time and to sweat up the horses to get them in shape for the race. Tamar is given a leg up by his father and then rides in a circle to warm up his mount. Gingu! In wailing, high-pitched voices, Tamar and other young jockeys sing the traditional pre-race song to encourage the horses. The jockeys then ride towards the horizon or out into the field until they are almost out of sight. Finally, the horses turn. Great, great! The jockeys scream to make their horses run faster. Great, great! With the short wood and leather crops called teshures, the jockeys urge their horses to a full gallop. In a swirl of dust and thundering hooves, they race by us. Near the gers, the jockeys slow their horses to a walk and cool them down. So they've been running really hard, really fast, and they're all sweaty. The horses are tied up. This would be a picture of one of those yaws we've been talking about. And the sweat is scraped from their coats with a long flat stick called a hussar. Then the horses are groomed and watered. At 11 o'clock at night, the sun finally sets. The stars appear. The family is snug in its gers. Smoke drifts from the chimneys. We curl up in sleeping bags in our tent and listen to the river. Tomorrow the cows and goats must again be herded in for milking. The mares milked every 2 hours, and the race horses sweated up and then pampered. The day before. It is the day before the Naadam. The jockeys with their trainers are camped in the hills surrounding the town where the Naadam is being held. Tamar's family is with us in the minivan. We scan the hills looking for Tamar's camp. His father worries about his son's ability to be able to control the stallion. Even though the name Tamar means strength, the horse goes wherever it wants, his father says. We stop at a camp to ask directions. We are welcomed by a group of men dressed in silk deals tied with long, colorful sashes. They invite us into a tiny nylon tent. There's no room for us in there, we whisper to Batsurin. You must squeeze in, she replies. It's a big honor to be invited. So we squeeze in. The front opening is filled with curious onlookers. An old man offers us bowls of homemade liquor brewed from the milk of sheep, cows, and goats. It warms our stomach, making us feel very much at home. A little boy crawls into the tent. He is the jockey who will ride the old man's horse in the Naadam. The boy grins at us, puffing out his chest and kind of showing off. After 2 bowls of the warming drink, we reluctantly leave. We are still looking for the right camp. Soon, Tamar's father spots it on a distant hillside. We join Tamar's group and sit with the men and jockeys. Curds, erg, and dried mutton are passed around. The jockeys eat heartily, and joke with one another. Tamar is quiet, though. He is thinking about the big race. After their meal, the men tie their horses' tails for decoration and to keep the tails from getting in the way of other horses when they race. The mounted jockeys then circle the campsite, singing Jingo, Jingo, and ride out across the steppe for one last sweat up before Naadam. The jockeys and their trainers will spend the night at the horses' camp. We leave them at 10 o'clock and return to the nearby Ger camp where we are staying. The sky is still bright blue and full of billowing clouds as our minivan drives along. We pass lines of mounted nomads, race horses in tow, heading towards the town. Emre wakes us for the next morning, and we arrive in town before sunrise. In the distance, we hear the high-pitched strains of jingle-go, jingle-go as the jockeys sing to their horses and circle the yah. Their wailing makes our hair stand on end. Soon, groups of jockeys with their trainers gather in the rose-colored light of the rising sun. It is the first race of the day, Tamar's race. The racers, I'm on 2 pages, aren't I? The races gather at the finish line. They will ride their horses at a walk 14 miles across the Gobi to the starting line, and then they race back. The trainers take the lead carrying tugs, long staffs topped with flowering white horsetails. The jockeys bunch up behind the leaders, and the procession starts off, heading towards a distant mountain peak. A jeep flying a big Mongolian flag brings up the rear of the group. The insistent beep, beep, beep of its horn herds the horses. Batsurin tells us that the man in the jeep with a bullhorn is yelling, "Keep in line, go to the left, keep up." We follow along in our minivan. The sun rises, bathing the procession of brightly costumed riders in brilliant lights. The riders pass a herd of curious camels. Suddenly, one of the horses bolts forward and takes off. It's Tamar's horse. Tamar pulls on the reins, struggling to control his mount. "Keep in line," bellows the man with the bullhorn. But Tamar disappears in the dust. There's a picture of him. An hour later, the jeep pulls ahead of the racers to a point 14 miles away from the finish line. A man holding a bright red flag jumps from the jeep, draws a line in the sand with the staff, and jams the flag into the ground. This is the starting line. We wonder what happened to Tamar. In a cloud of dust, we see the first horses approaching. To our relief, we spot Tamar in the middle of the pack. He's gotten control of the stallion. The horses are supposed to come all the way to the starting line and then go on a signal. But the minute the horses see the red flag, they know it's time to run. They bolt, turn, and head back to the finish line. The jockeys cannot hold them. Not one of the horses made it to the starting line. So once they see that, they go. Then the race has begun. Pandemonium, which means craziness. Go crazy. Girl, girl! The wild screams of the jockey blend with the horses' shrills and whinnies. The ground trembles and shakes as they race across the Gobi. Dust envelops the little jockeys and their horses, and we can no longer see them. We run to our waiting minivan, where Amar has Mongolian hip-hop music blaring from the radio. We slam the doors and buckle up. It's a rough, bumpy, zigzagging ride as we speed back to the finish line. We try to imagine what it must feel like to race at a full gallop on one of those half-wild horses. And these are kids doing that. Woo. Already, the finish line is filled with nomads sitting on the ground, on horseback, and on top of the finish line tower. The horses whinny and snort. The crowd is alive with excited anticipation. Attendants on horseback hold colored wooden pegs painted with numbers. They will join the riders and take the horses' reins after they pass the finish line, giving each rider a peg to indicate his or her place, number 1, number 2, number 3. We find a spot and sit on the ground behind the rope barrier. Tamar's father joins us. All eyes are focused on the upcoming cloud of dust. The dust cloud gets larger and larger. Soon we see black specks floating in the heat shimmer. The specks magically become horses and riders. The crowd strain forward. The pounding of hooves grows louder as the lead horses and jockeys emerge. The stallions are at a full gallop, and they're lathering in sweat. "Gree, gree!" screams a jockey, flailing away with his tashur. It's Tamar. The crowd goes wild as he crosses the finish line. Tamar's father grins from ear to ear. His son has lived up to his name. His son has shown his strength. His son won the race. He's number one, we shout, proud to share this moment with the young horseman and his family. Tamar's attendant rides along and takes the reins. More riders race out of the dust in groups of 2, 3, and 4. On and on they come until at last the last horse crosses the finish line. We call that horse the one with the wealthy stomach, says Batsurin, because he's fat and out of shape. The first race of the day is over. There is great jubilation at Tamar's ride into his camp. This horse has won races before. Last year's victory medal, tied to its forehead, glints in the sun. Tamar is very serious, as all the young jockeys are. After dismounting, he is given a ceremonial sip of an air gag by his father. Then Tamar poses for a winner's picture with his family, all dressed in their finest deals. When the celebration ends, Tamar walks around the camp with his hat over his face, acting silly like any 9-year-old. The closing ceremony. The horses are here. Look at the horses. The last race is over. The crowd surges forward to see the grand parade of winning horses and proud jockeys. The jockeys circle the field twice, then line up facing the crowd. An elder, standing in the stirrups of his saddle, praises the horses with a long rolling song. He sings into a microphone, and the song booms from loudspeakers. The horses are decorated with medals, and the jockeys are kissed by the officials. The owner of the horses are given ceremonial bowls of arag, and their prizes, medals hanging from colorful ribbons and rugs and other traditional gifts. Nowadays, even non-traditional items such as television sets and motorbikes are sometimes included in the prizes. It's the end of the Naadam in this little Mongolian town. As the ceremonies come to a close, the young jockey rides off on the horses that brought them and their families so much honor and glory. We close our eyes and we hear for one last time their haunting horse song. Jingle, jingle, jingle. And then here are some facts that I read through and I think are a good idea if you would read through. It's interesting what the gur is all about, and then just some other interesting Mongolian facts. I read this one down. It says if you accidentally step on someone's foot, you must shake their hand. That's kind of a weird thing, but just different things that you might want to read.